Hey, it's Mac with PriceActionTradingSystem.com, and today is September 19th. This will be our chart lesson, and another really tight range day. I mean, this is only about a 4-point range to begin with, which is enough room if you're moving from side to side. But when you get stuck in, these really tight ones like this, you really just can't trade this. Same thing kind of here. Um, Makes it really hard to trade. Early on, I had this a little bit tighter. I really had it like here. I believe it was here. Yeah. And you can see that was holding most of the price action at that point. But once we made this, oops, didn't mean for that to happen. But once we made this lower high, I moved these to where they fit better. And you can see still fits real. Actually, this one goes right here. Still fits real nicely. It's a measured move to both of them. So you have to adjust these sometimes as days go. But a couple of things I want to show you before we talk about the limited trades, because that's not going to take very long. Notice here that we had this first leg up. You measure that first leg, and there's a perfect measured move. So even on these range days, these legs measured moves work. Here was your first measured move down, and then you're looking for it to go to there, and we missed that a little bit. We couldn't get below this support here, but you'd also want to measure this one here. Really, this leg started down here, so I would measure it there as well, and that would probably be my first target. And you can see we missed that one by a tick maybe, so not much at all. But these measured legs still, these moves still work even on range days, so I did want to show you that. You got a nice little channel working down here. We've got a break outside. We tried to go lower twice, but the range is taking precedence, so it goes higher. And then here we bounced there again, and then of course every time we got up here, it turned it down. It couldn't go lower for a while there, but it still turned it down every time. Even that failed. It didn't go lower actually until we had a failed breakout, and then it headed lower. So. Not a whole lot lower, but we basically had a leg down, a little two-legged correction, and another leg down. So, but when the range is this tight, it just really makes it a little bit harder, and especially when it gets like this, you just can't make any money. Don't even try to enter that. I've got one short here before it was really obvious that it was a range. That one would have worked. But after that, when you're just kind of stuck in this range, you don't want to trade that. You would have just drawn you a line across here. And you just really don't have room either direction on any of those. So hopefully you can see that. But anyway, let's talk about the trades. I drew a little arrow here. I didn't mark this one. This bar is too neutral. And somebody asked me that in one of the question in one of the videos, that because the signal bar can vary from chart to chart, is it really important to pay any attention to what the signal bar looks like? Well, my experience is yes. We use the signal bar to filter out bad trades. Occasionally it's wrong and you miss one, like right here. If you'd have taken that trade, it would have worked. But more times than not, if you take that trade, it's going to fail on you. So my experience is, and I'm going to continue to use it and filter my trades. Um, if you want to experiment with it and find out for yourself, feel free to do so. But I can tell you it will keep you out of a lot of bad trades. And we'll just leave it at that. Like here's, let me just see one here. This would have been a double test of this level here, and you would have got burned right there. You can see that. Let me see if I can find another one. They're out there. Just trust me on this. I've done this for a long time, and if you're not careful with your signal bars, Yes, you will miss some good trades by using the signal bar to filter, but I believe in the long run it will save you a lot more losses than it'll allow you to have that more wins. So, but if you want to experiment with it, don't take my word on it. Um, Try it and figure it out for yourself. But I'm going to filter my trades with the signal bars. I've found that they're very, very important. So, but anyway, let's talk about this trade. Notice this high. We had a close outside. We tried to go higher once, then we pull back. We tried to go higher twice. So technically, and there's a bar in between, that is a double test. The only problem is your signal bar is very neutral, and this is definitely a trading range. So I'm not going to risk that. Even though it worked, the next time you try it, it won't work, and you'll get burned. Just like right here, this is very similar, and you wouldn't have got out of that trade, and it would have bounced on you and stopped you out. So um, you really just have to miss that move down. I went back and forth about whether it should be green, but that bar is so neutral and that's so sideways that I'm just going to say no, there's no way I would risk that one. So then we move down, we bounce right off these previous lows here. Then we test it once, we test it twice, and that's a nice reversal bar. I really would have expected that to take on off. It took it a minute. But it would have worked as long as you had your stop always goes one. This is your signal bar, so the entry is on. Let me clarify this because this was a question too. 95% of the time we're going to enter on a buy stop or a sell stop one tick above or below your signal bar. So if this is your signal bar, your buy stop goes one tick above that. As soon as it closes, put your stop there, your buy stop there. And if it breaks higher, it will trigger your trade and you're in it. If it doesn't, then no harm done and you reevaluate and you start over. So somebody was thinking that you enter here, you enter on this. I don't quite understand what they were saying. You enter on this bar, but I don't know how you could enter on that bar if this is your signal bar. There's just no way. Or maybe they thought you were in. Maybe they meant the bar next to it. Maybe they meant this one. Yes, you would have to enter on this bar, but this is still your signal bar. So your buy stop goes one tick above it. And if it breaks higher, then you're triggered into it on this bar. But this is really your signal bar that sets up the trade, and your safety stop goes one tick below that. If you're going short, assume this is your signal bar. You put your sell stop one tick below that. And when it breaks lower, it triggers it. And then your safety stop goes one tick above that bar. So hopefully that's clear. For some reason, people get that confused, and that's probably the most important part. And 95% of all trades are going to be entered that way. And if you're new, every trade should be entered that way. You'll hear me talk about some engulfing bars and dropping a limit order in occasionally. That's more advanced. That's for when you got a better understanding of what's going on and you're just looking for alternative ways to enter a trade that may not have been a perfect setup, but it's still, you understand what's going on. So until you get really good at reading the price action, all your entries should be on buy or sell stops, one tick above or below the signal bar. Forget about all the rest. I talk about them because not everybody that watches these videos are at the same level. A lot of you are brand new and beginners, but there's a good many people that have been here for years. And so they want to see the more advanced stuff as well. And so I have to talk about all of it, but just understand your level, your own level of understanding of price action and what we're doing, and trade accordingly. And for 90% of you, that's probably going to be nothing but buy and sell stop entries. So hopefully that's clear, because that's the gentleman I talked about yesterday. That's one of his contentions, that suddenly I was talking about an engulfing bar, and he just was flabbergasted and frustrated by that, because I don't talk about that in the manual, but I don't talk about entering on engulfing bars because that's not for beginners. And some of this stuff, also, let me throw this out here. As I've done this, if you go back and watch my very first videos, the basics of what I did years ago, and there's probably, I think I have over 1,000 videos out there, but if you go back to the first 12 videos, the basics of what we do is exactly the same. Nothing has ever changed. However, I've learned and picked up additional things and learned more creative ways to enter some trades and to filter trades. And so as I do that, I talk about that in the video. So don't be surprised if you see something in a video that's not in the manual. Just if you're new, concentrate what's on the manual and don't worry about the stuff that doesn't make sense to you. Your goal at this point is just to learn the basics. And as you get better, some of these things that don't make sense will be very clear to you. So, and I say this a lot, and I can't remember if I talked about this yesterday or not, but one of the things that you'll find is that, or rather, what I'm trying to say, really trying to say, is that um, we've been doing this for a long time, so we have this down to a science. So don't try to add to it. Don't try to change things. Just do the basics, and all the basics are there in the manual. Everything is in the videos. You don't even have to have the manual, but you have to watch the videos a lot longer to pick up everything. You don't have to buy anything to learn this. It's all here in the videos. Go back to video one from day one and just start watching until you pick it all up. But the main thing to understand is that um, the basics never change. Yeah, sure. As the longer I do this, I learn and spot new things. I mean, that's how, when you sit there and you watch price action or prices, I guess more, I should say more, when you watch prices print to this chart day after day, hour after hour, week after week, month after month, year after year, you start to notice things. And that's how I learned a lot of this stuff, just by sitting here watching it every day and learning. And so you may not see everything that I talk about in the videos in the manual, but don't let that shake you up or discourage you or confuse you. If it doesn't make sense, just skip that trade. Don't worry, either study it. There's two things you can do. You can either study it and listen to me talk about it over and over until it does make sense, or just skip it. And then eventually as you learn the basics and get this thing down, that particular type entry or setup or whatever I was doing will make sense. So I hope that's helpful, because that's one of the things this gentleman was struggling with, is that I talk about things in the video that he can't find in the manual. Well, that's going to happen, because some of this stuff I've picked up since I wrote the manual, and I haven't gone back and changed it. And really, it's hard to write about it, so you just talk about it in the video. So, I mean, it's not worth to go back and rewrite the manual to talk about an engulfing bar. I explain it right there in the video. If it doesn't make sense, or if it seems frustrating, just skip that one and stick to the basics, because 95% of all your trades are going to be entered on a buy or sell stop one tick above or below the signal bar. So I want to make sure that's clear for everybody. And some of you are probably watching this video for the very first time, and none of this is going to make sense. So, but if you want to go back and start from the beginning and watch the videos, or you can just start watching from now and going forward, you'll pick up this stuff. It's not easy. It takes a long, long time. And if you hadn't heard me say this before, it took me about 2 years. And I had somebody that understood, an old timer that knew price action well, teaching me. And it still took me 2 years. So this is not something you're going to learn overnight. So make sure you hear that. You're not even going to learn it in a few weeks or a few months. You're definitely not going to learn it by reading the manual and watching a few videos. You're going to have to get on a simulator and practice it and hone your skill. This is a skill. And you got to understand the rules to begin with, which they're all in the manual, and then you have to hone your skill. And that takes time. It's not going to happen. And it's not all going to make sense overnight, I promise you. But I've said this many, many times. This was the point I really wanted to make to begin with. A lot of times, when I'm telling you things, it won't make any sense. But once you've got this down and you get it, you'll come back and you say, I understand what you meant by that now, Mac, because it makes perfect sense. But when you were telling me it wouldn't make sense, I just didn't get that. I can't tell you. I've had over the years, I've had hundreds of people tell me that. I get it now. I know what you meant when you said that it'll make sense once I get it. And I don't know any other way to tell you. I mean, I wish there was a simple way that I could just say, hey, this is what you have to do, and it all makes sense now, but it won't, because it's very complicated. It's really, I mean, let me back up. It's not that hard, but getting there is complicated. Once you get there, it's not hard at all, but it's complicated getting there. And it's complicated to put into words. And that's why these videos are so valuable, in my opinion, because you can see it rather than just trying to read it on paper. Because just like this gentleman, he wrote me back today, and one of his points he's making, you know, he's misunderstanding what I meant by what's printed in the manual. And I can tell that by what he's saying to me. But and he's not the only one. I've had people do that before. You write something in, you put something down in words and you explain it, and they get something mixed up, and it completely turns what you're saying into something totally different. And that's one of the points that he's having with. As he reads the manual over and over, he'll probably catch it. Um, but he's got a couple of points that, based on what he wrote me back today, I can tell that he misunderstood what I'm saying in the manual. He's got it wrong, basically. I didn't say it. That's not what I said. It's close, but it's off enough to where it throws him off on his understanding of something we're doing. So, anyway, let's go on to the trades and let's wrap it up. I don't want another 30-minute video today. But anyway, I think we talked about this one. It's a double test rule, but it's a horrible signal bar. I didn't think it was worth even making green, because you might, if you get stuck in this, it's not worth getting stuck in congestion. And this is big enough and close enough to the EMA that we may just keep going sideways, just like we did right here. So you got to be really careful. You need a decent signal bar. And if this would have closed even one tick lower, then I would have probably said, yeah, this might be worth taking. But it's still very congestive looking. It's too many sideways bars there. So, but anyway, we come down and then we get a double test of this low here. We go low. This is a second entry short. And you might have considered this second entry short, but after making that double bottom and bouncing there twice, I don't think you want to, especially when it didn't break below the first bar and it created another one. That's telling you something. It's a lot of buying coming in right here. So don't take that short right there, right into all those lows. Just sit there. And when it fails and goes up, that's a huge reversal bar. It's a failed second entry short. It's bouncing off the lows. It's a double test. I like going long there. And it took it a minute, but it took on off. And it turns out to be a nice little trade, if you didn't let it shake you out of it. So it was tempting to enter again here too, but by that time, when we didn't take off that quickly, this is starting to look like congestion. I wouldn't enter anymore. I wouldn't enter either way. I might look for a failed break higher or a failed break lower, but I wouldn't enter inside of this any longer. There's a second entry short right here, but it's an inside bar inside of another inside bar, and these are pretty bullish. And this one's, even though this one's bearish, I think you're better off to skip that one, because you just don't have a room to get out. By the time at this point you would have had this line right here, and you just don't have room. So hopefully you can see that. But then we get the breakout. So most of the time that's going to fail. That's what our rules tell us. And notice what happens. You make a little double top in that big bearish bar. I like going short there. You had to ride out a little pullback, but if you're on already in, I would jump in here if you could get in here. On mine, it gapped over that. That turned out to be the midline for the whole day, and it gapped over that. Notice how it did that. There's no overlap right there. If you could get, I'm sure you couldn't have got your sell stop in there in time, so you could still try a limit order and put it where it goes and see if it'd come back and fill you. But this thing moved pretty quickly, so you may not have been able to get in here if you weren't already in. But if you could, I don't have a problem adding on there. And if you weren't in yet, definitely get in here, because now you got a double test, and look how bearish that bar is. Look how bearish both of them are. We're probably headed to test that low again. And you might get a measured leg like I showed you over here earlier. And then of course it bounces here, and now you got another larger double test of that level. You're a good bit away from the EMA. I made this one green because it's not a perfect signal bar, and generally you're better off to wait on the a higher low In other words, another correction that's at a higher level. But you didn't get that. So if you didn't enter here, you just got to watch this one. And then we come up, and normally you still probably want to see if it'll make a new high. So you get the close outside. You don't want to enter on the first entry, but if you get a second entry and a double test up here, which notice that high, and you tested it once, twice. I like entering there. And if this would have been a big bearish bar, you could have treated that like a double test of that, and I may have entered there. But generally, you want to see it try to go higher twice or lower twice if we're testing the low, and you don't have all your reversal stuff in play yet. So you were better off to wait on this one. And that's not a perfect signal bar either, but it's only 2 ticks, and it's a double test, and it's at the high. It's a range day. It's a second entry short. Notice that low, first entry, second entry. There's a lot of reasons to like that trade. You got just enough to work, and it just started going sideways. And there really wasn't anything else today. That's it. I mean, this market has just been. I mean, the one thing I will say is that, as we always notice, is that the longer it goes like this, once we have a day that it trends, it'll probably be spectacular, and you better make all the money you can make on that day. But the market's just really odd right now. Generally, this time of year, it's not this slow and lethargic and rangy. But I just think that there's a lot going on right now. The market's, this is a sign that the market's nervous. Nobody wants to sell it, but nobody's willing to buy it really at this, there's not a lot of buying coming in at this price level. But at the same time, nobody's really willing to sell it either. So we're just kind of at equilibrium here, and this is all we got. This is what we got to work with. And people will say, well, why don't we go trade another market? Well, you can do that if you like, but personally, just be patient, and you'll still find a few trades every day, and it will get better. And just by the time you decide you want to go trade another market, that's when you'll miss your best day ever, and that's what usually happens. So, and I'm a firm believer, rather than trying to trade multiple markets, find one market, become an expert at it. Become an expert at the ES. If you really like the fun and the big movement and the fast and down and dirty, go trade oil. Become an expert at oil. I prefer not to trade oil. I like the ES. You don't get any slippage. There's a lot of different reasons. You can go to my website and read that if you want to, but I don't want to rehash it here. But anyway, just not a lot happening today. Not a lot happening yesterday. Today might have been slightly better than yesterday, but it wasn't a whole lot. So, and tomorrow might be the same way, but tomorrow we may finally get that breakout day, and it just takes off like crazy in one direction or the other. But anyway, I'm going to wrap it up for today. We'll be back again to do it tomorrow. This is Mac with PriceActionTradingSystem.com, and we'll see you next time.